From Adversity to Abundance, hosted by entrepreneur and seasoned real estate investor Jamie Bateman, is the ultimate guide for active and passive investors seeking clarity, mental fitness, and the confidence to make inspired decisions in the world of real estate. With a decade plus of investing experience across various niches and a background as a combat veteran, former Army officer, and multi-million-dollar mortgage note company owner, Jamie brings a wealth of knowledge and inspiring stories to each episode. Through weekly episodes featuring insightful interviews with industry leaders and solo explorations of mindset and strategy, listeners will uncover actionable advice and tips to overcome challenges and build lasting financial success. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting, From Adversity to Abundance is your roadmap to turning obstacles into opportunities and achieving financial freedom.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and today we have with us Christian Ray Flores. Christian, how are you doing today?
Jamie, thanks for having me. I'm doing really good. I'm excited about this conversation.
Absolutely. This is going to be great. We were chatting a little bit beforehand, and I just was like, I got to hit record because he's been saying too many good things not to hit record. So I'm excited. We're going to talk. You have a very unique story, or definitely a unique story, I should say, and it's really interesting for sure. And you've got perspective that a lot of us don't have necessarily. And we're going to talk a lot about transitions and breakthroughs in life. And so I'm excited to dive in. But for the listener who may not be familiar with you, Christian, tell us a little bit about who you are today and what you're up to today.
Today, I live in Austin, Texas, with my wife and 3 daughters and my dog. And I run a couple of things. I run a personal brand and branding strategy company called Third Drive Media. And I run a high-performance coaching program called Exponential Life. We also have this effort overseas in Africa to lift kids out of poverty called Ascend Academy. So those are the main focal points.
Nice. That sounds like that's some pretty important stuff you're working on. And I know you have a master's degree in economics, and you are fluent in 4 languages, and you've got a lot of different cultural experience and like I said, a lot of perspective that I think a lot of us could really appreciate at this point. And you are the host of Headspace by Christian Ray Flores, and you're also the author of Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America. Before we jump into your backstory, talk a little bit about that book.
Oh, it's just a result of just many conversations over the years. I've been in the States for 20 plus years now. And of course, I visited many times before, but when we moved, I was just so, I was so appreciative and grateful as an immigrant, to be in a place that offers just unfair advantages, just completely off the charts beyond of what most of the world offers. And I would say those things to my kids, to my wife, and she over time she was like, these are actually really good insights, and you should write it down someday. And I'm like, yeah, someday maybe. Until I think maybe a couple of years ago, she said, that book that I've been telling you to write. This is a really good time because there's so much almost like self-loathing in America.
Yeah,
that
for sure.
that I think people would really appreciate to have an optimistic view from an immigrant. So, and sort of the subtitle of the book is A Love Letter from an Immigrant, basically
I love
highlighting that. So
yeah, that's really good. I mean, and again, there's no perfect country or anything like that. We're not even close to that.
exactly.
But man, so many of us who were born in the States really don't appreciate what we have here. So, can you name 1 or 2 of the advantages you're talking about?
Well, I would say there's 10 chapters, 10 reasons. And by the way, if you buy the book, there's like color, there's illustrations, there's QR codes, multimedia sort of dimensions of it. So it's very eclectic that way. But I would say that the number 1 for me is the entrepreneurial spirit.
Love that.
Because it's sort of this, and I highlight, the whole book actually is about a cultural baseline or a collective consciousness, right? how this group of people, this large group of people, some of the very distinctive ways they think,
Mm-hmm.
and how culture shapes prosperity, country, all those things. That's why, for example, one of the critiques of America that is, I think, fair is like
Mm-hmm.
nation building. It
Mm-hmm.
never worked because
Mm-hmm.
we go, don't you, people of Afghanistan,
Right.
don't you want A, B, C, and D, which
Yeah.
is the answer to us from
Right.
America, or is
Right.
very obvious, and they go, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
but in the same way, the advantage of having this whole nation, 350 million people,
Mm-hmm.
of whom so many are eager to invent something, start something, try something. The percentage of people who think that way is staggering compared to most of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can find partners, employees, co-founders, investors, people like that
Yeah.
in America in ways that you couldn't possibly find in other
Mm-hmm.
places. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the opposite side, maybe of the of the spectrum
Mm-hmm.
is this anti-fragility, this embracing of mistakes and failures
Mm.
as a stepping stone towards success.
Okay.
That's also actually quite unusual, you know.
Yeah.
Culturally,
Right.
because
Right.
especially old sort of highly structured societies with a lot of history, they ossify, right? So you you mistakes are considered shameful, right?
Sure.
Um, Failure is shameful, all of those things, so less people try new things, right? And
Interesting.
so
Yeah.
so the ability to go, and we in America, we write books, we write biographies about people who failed 3 or 4 or 5 times,
Yeah.
or some of our most iconic people
Mm-hmm.
are, we highlight their failures as the journey to success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that again
Yeah.
is a huge difference
Yeah.
culturally speaking of
Yeah.
Americans.
Well, don't want to get stuck here, but I spent a year in Iraq working with the Iraqi army and a lot of, civilians as well. And just both of those points that you just talked about resonated in that regard, where it's like, no, no, don't you see this is the way? And it was very difficult to
Yeah,
kind of get
exactly.
the
Yeah,
Iraqi
yeah,
army and everyone to buy into what we think is the way to go, right? And
yeah.
then secondly, for sure, there was not a lot of like taking ownership of mistakes, or even just accepting that mistakes are okay. And so there's a lot of
Hmm.
just sort of yeah,
It's remarkable. And now
it
we're
is.
immersed in the American culture, so we don't
Right,
see that that's distinctive, right?
right, right.
And so that's sort of that's something I highlight quite a bit.
Hmm.
And then the other thing I highlight at the end of every chapter, so it's 10 chapters, 10 reasons to love America.
Hmm.
I basically say, look, this great strength of America is being challenged or corroded by this other thing.
Mm.
And I want you to pay attention to it.
Mm.
So that's basically
Yeah.
the general sort of
Okay.
flow of ideas.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm going to check that out. So, um, let's jump into your backstory. I know you've been through several career transitions and had a lot of ups and downs and some breakthroughs and I guess we'll say different seasons in your life. Um, Jump back to that first one that you and I briefly spoke about before we hit record. What's going on in your life at that time, and talk about that initial transition you made.
So the my first professional breakthrough,
Hmm.
I was 22 years old, I think 22, 23.
Hmm.
And basically what happened is let me give you a little bit of a backstory because it would make more sense, right?
Hmm.
So come, I grew up in literally 4 different countries and 3 continents. By age 7, I had moved to 4 countries and 3 continents.
Wow.
And by age 9, I'd learned 4 languages. But in that, there was also a lot of suffering.
Mm.
When I was a refugee child, when I was 5 years old in Latin America, we ended up in Germany, then Russia, then Africa. I grew up in Africa, so I saw civil war develop there, and just all of the stuff that goes with that. A lot of lack, poverty, extreme poverty, witnessed and also experienced some of it as well. And then because my mom is Russian, my dad's Chilean. After they're divorced, we moved to Russia with mom. And basically, we moved to Russia after being very international people, speaking
Hmm.
4 different languages, into a very rigid sort of zero opportunity kind of space called the Soviet Union, right? I mean, entrepreneurship is literally illegal, right? And then we
Wow.
see the whole thing just completely implode. I'm 21 years old. The whole
Yeah.
thing comes crashing down. There's a free market situation that was brief, unfortunately, maybe like a decade or so, right? Like
Hmm.
Wild West free market, complete
Hmm.
no rules, right? And and I find myself with this dilemma in front of me. I had just graduated college with a master's degree in economics. Most of my friends are making the very wise and logical choice of going into finance, trade, banking, academia, right? Those are the
Hmm.
choices. I was musical my whole life, so my passion was always music, dancing. I was a break dancer. I had a great voice since I was like 4 years old. I never stopped doing music, but it was never sort of a career option. But then, with this completely new almost like new world, right? Everything is
Yeah.
completely open.
Opened up. Yep.
I was like, maybe I should try this. And of course, on the surface, that's just a dumb idea because the odds of success are so low. And making that decision was pivotal because I basically jumped in, going, I'm all in. I'm young. I can live in a shoebox. I'm not gonna regret for the rest of my life if I don't try it. I have this sort of deep intuition, and I think more people. My point is, more people should trust deep intuition,
Okay.
not impulsive behavior, but
Mm.
there's almost like a whisper of your soul, kind of,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
go,
Sure.
man, this just feels too right, and I know that on the surface doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
And
It's more
but
spiritual and, like you said, soul based
yeah,
than logical,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I basically went into music a year after I started in earnest trying to pursue a professional career. I had uh, two or three labels offer me contracts.
Hmm.
I was
Wow.
on national television by the end of the year. Then I was doing small clubs, menus. By the end of 2 years, I had two or three big hits, radio, TV. I was playing sports arenas. By the end of 3 years, I had a number one hit, and Boris Yeltsin was running for re-election against the communists who were coming back, and they used my song as the anthem for his campaign. And that was the last time the communists actually had a chance of winning
Hmm.
in Russia. And of course, the irony of it was that my parents were communists and Marxists, so that
Mm.
made for some awkward conversations at home.
I can imagine.
So
Wow.
I had this massive career for about 10 years across 15 different countries, doing music, and it was just one of the most amazing
Yeah.
experiences of my life.
Wow.
But I guess the pivotal point is, how do you make that choice, right?
Right. Right. So
Uh,
speak to so a lot of our listeners are real estate entrepreneurs or real estate investors, into, finance and investing and that kind of thing. And, even if we're not talking about that specifically, they have, transitions in their life and decision points, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
so, speak to that person who maybe is in college or fresh out of college and is trying to figure out, do I just follow my passion and do what I like doing? Like,
Hmm.
or do I think about the marketplace and what people will actually pay for, and reward me for, because I've, I've seen where people take a passion and ruin it. They take a hobby and try to monetize that,
Absolutely.
and then
Hmm.
they hate that hobby, and then they didn't monetize it well, and then it just didn't turn out well. Or the other extreme where you're just chasing the almighty dollar and you're not doing what you love. So where's that
That's
balance, and how do you look at that?
And what you hinted at, Jamie, is that it's not binary, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
more nuanced than that.
right.
And I would say that on from the standpoint of passion, the reason why I think people should pursue passion,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely temper it with wisdom and
Mm.
guidance. Guidance
Yeah,
is really honestly the key to every navigating anything, right? Have a coach, have a mentor, have people who have been there before you have,
yeah,
who can see around corners. Um, I would say, well, the reason, the case for passion is that you're going to stick with it longer,
right.
and
True.
you're gonna obsess over something because passion really sort of fuels obsession.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so, so I think that's definitely a case to be made for
Mhm.
passion
Right.
because you can just work so hard and iterate and tweak incessantly. You live and breathe this thing. I mean, the odds are very high that you're going to get real good at it, basically,
Mm, yeah, yeah,
much
sure.
higher, right?
Right.
So for me, that was sort of one of the things. It was like I worked for this international trade company as almost like an intern, right? I was just bored out of it. I was so
Hmm.
bored out of my mind. And it's not that
Hmm.
I'm not smart. It's not that I don't have the right
Yeah.
education or even the capabilities. Just
You weren't passionate about it.
yeah. So it's hard to obsess over something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah. And that's how you build. Well, I've heard that, where does confidence come from? Confidence comes from competence,
Hmm.
and competence comes from reps. And so what
Exactly.
you're saying
Yeah.
is you put in a lot of, you really can only put in a lot of quality reps if you have that passion
That's
for
right.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other dimension, I think that's where I think real estate might tie into it on a
Hmm.
foundational level, right? And you and I spoke that, man, I I wish I had done real estate investment early on and I didn't do it and I was terrible. I did really bad with real estate. And so the people that are listening, if you feel a calling for this, get your reps in, do this thing. Real estate is a great space. I would love to get into real estate and actually be
Hmm.
good at it, and I
Hmm.
think I will. But the similarity, the parallels, for example, with let's say music, right? On the surface, the safer bet is go work for a bank or start teaching at a university, something like
Hmm.
that, right?
Yeah.
What there's stability, predictability. I mean, you will be hired. You're very employable. You know, I spoke 4 different languages, all kinds of ways that I could do
Hmm.
it. So it's almost like the bird in your hand type of situation, right? Like
Right.
I know this is going to be good. Well, the thing is, the probability of that thing being basically a salary person of increasing with unlimited upside is very low, you
Right.
know,
Right. For
unless
sure.
you have capital, and there's other ways to do it.
Hmm.
But with music, with media, which is
Yeah.
actually it's interesting that I thought of that then, but it's now a reality with content creators.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like this massive wave, right?
Right.
It's basically like, look, if you can't code, do media. Why? Because it's an infinitely scalable resource. You know,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you and I having a conversation, we could just have coffee at a coffee shop,
Hmm.
but a few hundred or a few thousand people might be listening to the same
Right.
exact conversation,
Right.
and it
Right.
feels like they're having coffee with us.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
how remarkable is that?
Amazing.
So it's sort of the same thing with music is that, man, I can write some songs, maybe they'll suck, but maybe
Right.
if I'll get better at it, and that's exactly what happened, is that, I was so passionate, and obviously I was gifted, and also there's some luck, all of those
Sure.
things, but you sort of create your luck if you pursue a direction in life.
Mm.
And then eventually I sold millions of albums, millions and
Wow.
millions and
That's
millions of
amazing.
albums. So something that you wrote like on your kitchen table or in the subway, right? You're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's a good idea. Then you go to literally another country where
Yeah.
people speak another language and they will sing this song back to you. 10,000 people will sing that song. So that's sort of the beauty of
Amazing.
having a vision that is scalable, that will, yeah, maybe in the beginning it's going to be hard,
Right.
but it's going to pay off over and over and over again, right?
Right. Right.
So it's like writing software and music is very similar, right? It's like a a
Yeah.
SaaS model of business
Right.
growth.
Right. Yeah. And not that there's any guarantee that someone
No,
listening is going to have the
yeah,
same success that you did, but you're
exactly.
right. There's unlimited potential in that type of sort of one to many,
That's exactly it.
disbursement
Yeah.
of content. And yeah, I'm sure in the early days you struggled. I'm sure, right? You didn't have immediate
Oh my
success in
gosh,
music,
yeah.
right?
No, no. I mean, I not only did I struggle, I sucked, So I was just not good, right?
Right.
But if you see sort of the general broad strokes of a trajectory,
Yeah.
that's sort of what I'm trying to get to.
Hmm.
Let's say in a real estate, you
Yeah.
go, okay, I can I can invest, let's say, in, multifamily,
Yeah.
properties or
Right.
luxury properties or commercial or whatever.
Hmm.
And then I know how this can spread. I know the advantages that I have, the unfair edge that I may have if I,
Yeah.
get the business model this way as opposed to what everybody else does. And
Right.
because you obsess, you start finding these niches and these gaps in the
Hmm.
market that can be extraordinary. Like, for
Yeah.
example, what you're doing right now
Yeah.
is you're just sort of mining for wisdom and finding
Right.
parallels in somebody else's story
Right.
in a medium that is scalable. And of
Right.
course, as somebody who does real estate, you are now influencing the mindset and the thought process of so many people who are into real estate.
Mm. Hmm.
Okay, well, that's a business model, right?
Yeah.
They're not paying you exactly, but they're not paying you by, let's say, memberships, but they are
Right.
giving you their time. They respect you, they recognize you, they start trusting your voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
these are all ways to scale the
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
the passion that you have, and accelerate it.
Right. And to your point about the salary in finance as an example, it's just it is limited, right? You're directly trading your time for money,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that's fine, and that's not bad, and that can be a great way to save and maybe accumulate capital to invest that may
Yeah.
be able to then
Hmm.
explode, if you will, um and also I think it's one thing I like to remember when thinking about career advice, either for myself or someone else, but is the fact that life can have seasons, and just because you made a decision a few years ago doesn't mean that that's a permanent decision. And I know in your case, Christian, in your story,
Yeah.
you've gone through several seasons in life, and to me that just helps take a lot of the pressure off. Yes, it's an important decision for sure. I'm not minimizing that. You went into music for many years, and that's obviously paid off for you and was a great move. But even if you tried it and it didn't work so well financially or with the album sold, et cetera, that doesn't mean that it's just like a death sentence for
No, no, no.
for
Yeah,
you at all.
you learn something from it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
absolutely. So, how did you transition away from music? What did that next breakthrough look like for you?
So thank you for asking. And this is actually I would say the number one reason why people enroll in my coaching program
Okay.
is um, people are in between seasons.
Mm,
So there's a season where you become comfortable, you master this season, and then things start shifting from the inside out, right? Or from the outside in. Sometimes the market changes,
true.
whatever, right? And you have this sense of contraction and confusion. You don't have clarity, so you ask for guidance.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to say to people who listen to your podcast is
Hmm.
this is perfectly natural, and
Hmm.
we're sort of tempted to feel that it's inadequate when that happens, like,
Mm,
you
hmm.
know but
Yeah.
that's actually just the very pattern of life. It's just hardwired into it. In between even sort of seasons that are completely maybe self-created, or that we want to pursue something new or different, or an evolution of what we're doing,
Hmm.
I see these three seasons that are just universal. I'll tell you what they are just to
Okay.
give you an idea, and then I'll
Yeah.
illustrate with the story. So the first season that all of us have is the season of students, right?
Mm,
So we're basically not participating in life as adults, right?
yeah.
We're sort of looking from the outside in, and
Sure.
we're going to school, we're going to college, we're
Yeah.
learning about the thing that we think
Yeah.
we're
You're
interested in, but
consuming
yeah,
information,
and
right?
we're not doing the thing.
Right.
Then what happens is then you become a practitioner of the thing. So you
Sure.
you start adulting, and I have three daughters that went to college. Two out of three are out of college,
Hmm.
and they are, just the transition is just so hard. They
Sure.
couldn't wait to get out of the house, and then once you start adulting, you start realize adulting is hard, right?
Right.
So you have a practitioner, but also you have the benefits. You go, oh my gosh, I've never made this much money in my whole life, and
Hmm.
well, a few years pass by, and that money that made you sort of exuberant with joy no
Yeah.
longer satisfies you.
Sure.
The opportunities that you have, the car you drive, the sort of creative freedom you don't enjoy, because you're just an employee, sort of low level, trying to get some mastery.
Hmm.
They don't satisfy because now you're good at something,
Mm.
and that's the transition from practitioner to master, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because
I
now
see.
you want control, you want creative control, you want to start your own thing, or you want to start a new department, write a
Sure.
book, et cetera, right? You want to stop playing small stages and start playing bigger stages.
Yeah.
You want the respect you deserve because you feel like you're good at this,
Hmm.
and that's another transition. And then what happens is, and this is probably the hardest one, because you have respect, you usually have some money. It's all relative, obviously, right?
Sure.
But comparable to a practitioner, a master has creative control, some money,
Hmm.
respect, status, maybe a family. You have like this fuller life,
Yeah.
and then, but you're always the sort of the cost of that is you're much busier, complexities are higher.
Mm,
The consequences of your decisions are much
greater.
more
Yeah.
greater, right?
Bigger problems
So
to solve, greater consequences with your
yeah. So
decision.
people start plateauing and going in circles around that
Mm,
time as well.
interesting.
And then by the end of it, what happens is even your desires change, right? The
Yeah.
thing that gets you fired up as a sort of a practitioner who wants to be a master is you just want to hustle, you want to build stuff, right?
Right, right. Sure.
And then I have so many people coming to the program who are like, you know what, I've built something, and honestly, I don't have the passion to build anymore. And
Right.
that's a sign that you're transitioning into sage. That's the fourth
Okay. The fourth one is sage. Okay.
sage. And basically,
Yeah.
even your desires from the inside out
Yeah.
are to pass something on, to teach wisdom,
Sure.
to leave
Yeah,
a
yeah.
legacy. What does
Right.
this mean exactly? To spend more
Right,
time
right.
with family, all of those things, grandkids
Sure.
even. So those are sort of natural things, and then on top of that, you have other things that are just like personal to you. So the story I was going to tell you is that I'm this is probably, I would say, maybe 6 years, 7 years into my music career. I'm on a train with my entourage, and we're going from city to city. We're playing big venues,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember just having this profound. I was alone in the car for some reason. I was traveling with like 20 plus people at the time, and I was just in deep thought, and I was looking out, and I remember the thought was, is this all there is for me?
Mm.
And I caught myself going, seriously, you're asking that question, like,
Right.
how many musicians get to live this kind of life? And it's like
Right.
0.1%, right?
Yeah.
And but the truth is, it was almost like a deeper intuition, again, a deep knowing,
Yeah.
a sense of dissatisfaction.
Yeah. You weren't happy, and then you felt guilty for not being happy.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. So it's
Gotcha.
like, and I'm thinking of your audience right now, and
Yeah.
maybe some of them are sort of mature real estate investors and
Right.
they want something more, or somebody might be like a salary employee and they're going, I'm sort of done with exchanging time for money.
Yeah.
I want to own things,
Right.
right? And
Sure.
I should be grateful. Maybe I have a good job, a wife, a
Right.
kid, a house, a mortgage,
Right.
but I want more. There's more. There's got to be more, right? And so
Yeah.
that's why maybe they're tuned to you.
Yeah.
And it was sort of,
Absolutely.
for me, it was sort of one of those things where I go, okay, and my complaint, quote unquote, right? And I shouldn't be complaining. I get it, but it's a season thing.
Right.
It was that, look, I'm entertaining. I'm basically traveling within the sort of cultural space of 15 different countries, the former Soviet Union, and I'm selling millions of albums. People are singing my songs, the whole thing. But I'm also on the road all the time
Mm-hmm.
because now it's a machine, right? Promotional machine, money making machine. You have to feed the business. You have to create music videos, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very investment heavy.
Sure.
And I want to build a family. It was the highest desire that I wanted, and I'm
Mm.
like, gosh, I want to build a family. A, I want to have B, I want to have kids. I want to be present with the kids.
Yeah.
This ain't gonna work, right? So that's one thing. I became spiritual and I wanted to do spiritual things, and
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't possible. It was too fragmented. I was away too much. Also, like I have an economics degree. I wanted to do entrepreneurship. I speak four different languages, and my music was very specific pop, Russian speaking for this particular type of person, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. So I was sort of bored. I was like,
Right. Right.
underutilized,
Sure.
resource wise, internal
You had
resource.
more to give and a greater impact to make, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, but the downside is, look, if I walk away from this,
Yeah.
what if everything else, all the things that I want to build fail, right? It's
Sure.
like,
Right.
so that's the huge, I'm like horrified at the thought, right? Because the
Right.
risk, now you have more to lose. And that's sort of
Yeah.
the problem with people who already have success, is that they
Right.
may be super unhappy, but yeah, they have so much more to lose.
Right.
So
And
they get
that is
stuck
like,
easier.
if you had a salaried job and you didn't
Yeah.
have the success that you achieved, I mean, not saying it's easy to walk away from that, but typically speaking, you could go try an entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If it didn't work out, just go get another job.
That's
But
exactly it.
it
Yeah.
would be almost impossible, I would guess, for you to recreate your music career if you just walked away from it, right?
So, which is terrifying, right? Because you
Right.
go, like, if I do whatever else I do, I'm not going to start influencing millions of people. Like the odds of that are pretty close
Yeah.
to zero,
Pretty low.
you
Yeah.
know? So, man, is it worth it?
Right.
So that's sort of
Sure.
the agony of decisions like
Yeah.
that between seasons.
Yeah, and I'll just throw in here that you do your coaching, and I do mentorship for mortgage note investors and real estate investors. It's very specific, but we do get into different, different asset classes and strategies. And that the reason I like what we do on the mentorship side is it's not one, the answers are not one size fits all. We're getting in this discussion a lot of nuance, passion versus guidance and wisdom, and and it depends on your age, your life circumstances. What are you passionate about? But we help break down, different strategies you can employ if you want to be a real estate investor, rental properties versus mortgage notes, or even within mortgage notes, there's a whole spectrum of active to passive. So there's a lot of complexity, and that may sound overwhelming to people, but it's not a one size fits all. And so I do think it's important to work with a coach or a mentor who's, like you said
Absolutely.
earlier, has already been there, or at least can see around the corner a little further than you can at this point. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
That is probably like the thing. Like if you were to make a decision that will have the most sort of weighted impact on the
mhm,
future and that's the thing.
mhm.
Have you ever heard of the ignorance tax?
I have, but
Okay,
refresh
so
my
so
memory.
this is a great illustration, right? And actually don't remember where I heard it either. But
Mhm,
this one guy was saying, okay, the ignorance tax, for example, is that you don't perceive it that way. Is that, for example, you want to learn how to make $1 million, right?
mhm,
Consistently every year. You make 100,000, you want to learn how to make 1 million.
mhm,
Every year, you don't invest time, energy, money, emotional labor into knowing how to do that. You're essentially paying $900,000 a year of ignorance tax.
mhm.
so, so
Right.
and it's true. Like, for example,
Yeah.
like even you with real estate, I
Yeah.
bet people who get into it and get your guidance and feel sense the first success and they go, oh my gosh, I can, the
Mhm.
trajectory of this success is this way.
Yeah.
And then the feeling is like, I should have gotten into this 5 years ago, right? That's the
Right.
ignorance tax regret, right? So,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and
Well,
people feel that all the time.
to me, that's like opportunity costs. What are you not doing with your time that
That's exactly it. Yeah.
could have been a great investment?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so back to your story that so you're sitting there and you're really not satisfied. You're just,
Hmm.
but then you feel a little guilty for not being happy with all these blessings that other people don't have, right?
Yeah.
And all the success you've reached. So, what goes through your mind? How did you move forward at that time?
I basically thought about it some more, and I went to my sort of my management group, my partners, and I said,
Hmm.
"Hey, I'm gonna this is what I feel, and I'm gonna transition out. But
Hmm.
I'm gonna transition out responsibly because I know there, people are livelihoods are
Sure.
on the line here.
Yeah.
So I basically gave him an idea that I want to transition out. It took probably 3 years or something like that,
Okay.
and but that was just super painful, honestly,
Mm.
because super scary, and all the people that they bet on you,
Mm.
they're disappointed in you.
Oh, right.
They think you're crazy and out of your mind, right?
Right.
So,
Sure.
so that was hard because these are
Yeah.
people that you were in the trenches with, building
Yeah.
something meaningful when there was nothing there, and it's just painful
Yeah. And
to.
the truth is, we can talk about, I don't care what people think,
We
I'll
do,
do
yeah,
me, but we do
yeah,
care
we
what
do,
people think. And especially,
yeah,
like you said, the people you've been working
hmm,
day in and day out with. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
you should care what they think too,
Yeah, I mean, my parents. It was so
Yeah.
funny because my parents thought I was crazy and I was starting a music career, and then I was crazy for leaving it, right? So it's like,
Right. It's like, uh, can't please everybody all the time. But
exactly, yeah.
okay, so 3 years, that's actually a long time. I mean, to
Hmm.
transition out, but it does sound like you did it responsibly. So what were you transitioning to at that time?
So I did a couple of things. I did some ministry and philanthropy work.
Okay.
Those were the things that I felt like a deep desire to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I just it was just growing. The desire was growing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a little bit. For actually, I transitioned into it in about 3 years full time, and then that's sort of a little bit later. We moved stateside, and I did philanthropy for 3 straight years after that, three and a half. So that was sort of my first entry point into the United States,
Okay.
and that was a salary position, right? So that's interesting. You go from not having a boss to having a boss,
Yeah.
but it was a very interesting, like it was starting over. It was scary as
Mm-hmm.
well. I really wanted to know how to serve the poor
Mm,
because I'd grown up in all these places, right,
yeah.
and of extreme poverty, and I was just so inspired to do that and figure out what to do with that. And I was invited. We had to move to the States. My wife was getting sick because she has some autoimmune issues,
Mm,
and she's American,
hmm.
and so I didn't want to leave because I had a brand recognition, right? A
Sure.
massive personal brand. And if you go to this, go to the States, no one knows or cares who you are here, right? So I'm like nobody, right? That's depressing, right? After you've
Sure.
made so much effort to build something. So
Right.
I got an offer to work for a big charity called Hope Worldwide, and I was sort of their Latin America director because I speak the language. There's like 9 projects in 9 different countries, and then there was a national project, like a $2.5 million project that was an education project for inner city kids called Positive Choice. So to me, that was sort of a great bridge. It
Hmm.
paid terribly,
Right.
but it was a great bridge because like, I had enough creative control
Uh-huh.
to satisfy that part,
Okay.
right?
Good.
And then also it's a new place, so I want to be in a learning position. So I think a really good place to be a salary person is to learn from people that are really, really good at something.
Mm. Hmm.
And I was working directly under the CEO of people that just giants of
So now you're back in
philanthropy.
the student
Yeah,
phase,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right, starting over again.
I'm
Yeah.
learning this new world
Yeah.
basically, and to me that was so worth it because I walked with them, right? I could
Hmm.
observe them. I would see the things that they were doing, and I would learn philanthropy on a global scale, what they were
Hmm.
doing. And I also learned what I eventually I'm like, oh, this kind of and this kind I don't like, for example, right?
Hmm.
So I developed my own approaches after that, and now we have this after school academy in Maputo called the Send Academy, and we it's an entrepreneurial focused thing. So we don't want to
Okay.
give them fish, we want to teach them how to fish, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
take these kids when they were like 9, and we teach them character, computer literacy, and English early on. And the idea is we want to make them super employable very early on, or even being able to start their own business like a
Nice.
freelancers on Fiverr or something like that, doing either
Yeah. Yeah.
coding or design or things like that.
Hmm.
And this is huge for places like Mozambique. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. So if you just
Hmm.
sort of focus on the local market is like zero, right? The unemployment among youth is like probably 40, 50% or something like that. It's
Hmm.
crazy.
Wow.
And these are people, these are kids from the extreme poverty situations, under $2 a day, living in the slums. They don't even
Wow.
have access to a computer normally, basically. And we give them that access. So
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so that was your bridge, right?
yeah, that
So,
was my bridge. Yeah.
and before we keep going, and this is, maybe a little personal, but how much success, maybe a number or two that you could throw behind it, did you experience from the music industry? The show is called From Adversity to Abundance. You
Yeah.
grew up in extreme poverty.
Yeah.
Can you speak in some specificity as to the financial abundance that you reached?
It was definitely in the millions. We reinvested a lot of it.
Hmm.
Um, and it was definitely millions and millions of albums sold,
Hmm.
tens of millions of people entertained, TV,
Hmm.
radio, live
Wow.
shows, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, we helped literally the political process of the country. So
Yeah, that's crazy. Right.
the cultural impact was massive.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I still get every once in a while I get fan mail, like which is crazy. I'm like, I haven't been doing this for a long time. So
Right. It's wild.
the financial was a little bit less than you would expect in
Mm,
America because we were reinvesting a lot of it, and we
mm,
also were building future businesses. So
mhm,
and that was one of the painful costs of actually walking away, is that we
mm.
started a girl band, sort of
Okay.
modeled after the Spice Girls,
Okay.
and then
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, and because we had a really good tight team,
Yeah.
me and two of my other co-producers, we handpicked the girls, wrote
Hmm.
the songs, invested in studio time, music videos, promotion,
Hmm.
every resource we had, we pumped into this group.
Yeah.
And as I made the decision to exit the business as the the group was taking off.
Oh, wow.
So that was basically another cost that I had to the cost of opportunity, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I sort of calculated that in the decade after I walked away, and I had to give up my share in that business
Hmm.
in exchange for for the intellectual rights of my own music, because I wanted to keep that, was my share was $15 million, very, very conservatively,
Hmm.
like probably much
Wow.
more, you know.
Wow.
So anyway, so that's just to
Yeah,
give you an
it
idea
gives no, that
of
gives us a really good idea. Yeah, for sure. And sometimes I have to pull that out of people, and
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
no. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, it's a little bit personal, but I definitely
yeah.
appreciate that. So, that's. I mean, that's like you said earlier, it's all relative. But that's pretty amazing success. So, and I know we're not going to go dive deep into each breakthrough career
Hmm.
transition, that you've had, but so what were the other transitions over your career span?
So the next one I did, I got my sort of footing in America, right? I
Hmm.
had a little bit more. So we were living in LA at the time, and I just I thought let's do a. I feel called back to the creative side of things, so
Hmm.
started a production company for Eastern European artists, like the top,
Hmm.
with high-end producers in Hollywood. So we would do music albums, music videos, things like that. And it was like just an idea. I had no connections. My wife Deb had connections, and we used some of her connections. She used to work for MTV and Universal Music when she was in the
Okay.
States. So our first, basically, I'll explain to you. There's. I want to give you this one story,
Hmm.
because it illustrates that intention plus some expertise plus just a daring step forward can sometimes result in almost like a divine gift, like a kiss from God type
Hmm.
situation where you go, oh my gosh, wow, I want to keep going now.
Hmm.
So I remember when I told Deb, hey, I feel like I want to start a production company, and she looked at me, rolled her eyes, like seriously again, right? And
Right.
then I started talking about it, and I basically and I shared the concept, and she said, I mean, look, if you can find some clients, I can pull some strings and see if I can find somebody. And
Hmm.
so I asked a friend, I didn't have any money for even for a website, who built it like a one-page website. And I think maybe a week or two after I built the website, somebody calls me and said, who I knew from Eastern Europe, and they were like, hey, we're coming to LA. Do you know anybody who does music videos? And
Wow.
like just like that. and
Wow.
and and I feel like that's how you make your luck, right? Would they have called if I didn't have that intention?
Maybe.
I don't know, maybe,
Maybe,
maybe
but maybe
not. Y-
it wouldn't have you wouldn't have seized that
oh
opportunity.
yeah, yeah, and I maybe would have answered no, I don't know
Right.
anybody, right?
Right.
So, and I said, as a matter of fact, this is what I do here. Like that was sort of my, like,
Yeah.
check out this website.
That's
and
hilarious. Well,
and,
actually,
and
just briefly on that point, I was listening
yeah,
to a podcast a couple weeks ago about creating your own luck, and I guess it was more about manifestation
yeah,
versus seeing opportunities that maybe were already there, but now
that's
that you're
exactly it.
looking for them, you see
Yes,
them,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So maybe you
that's
didn't
exactly it.
manifest that per se, but maybe you now saw the opportunity and you seized it because you were
I
ready.
think so. Yeah, I really
Yeah.
believe manifestation. Like, I really believe in the divine intervention
Hmm.
piece, but I
Sure.
think a lot of this manifestation piece is just a state of mind and
Yeah.
working towards something where you actually see an opportunity.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right.
you wouldn't even see it, right?
Exactly. Right. I
Um,
think that makes a lot of sense. So,
so yeah,
yeah.
so basically, and I'm like, so they were like, oh, that sounds great, man. That's awesome. I'm like, we work with the biggest Hollywood producers and directors, and you're in safe hands. So I have literally zero. I haven't spoken to anybody.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm
So, and
panicking
and
inside.
that's where, like, you get into fake it till you make it
Yeah,
versus,
yeah,
we're not, there's a line there. It's like you're not,
yeah. I'm not
complete.
exactly lying because my
Right.
wife did work in the business and she didn't
Right.
have the contacts, right?
Right.
But it's like contacts that are 15 years old or 10 years old, right? So we haven't made the calls. And
You got to push the envelope a little bit,
yeah,
push the
yeah.
boundaries.
So and
Yeah.
and I'm like, what's the budget? And I was expecting at the time, I think a budget for a music video was $10,000, $15,000, 20 maybe. And then he goes, oh, 150,
Wow.
and I'm like panicking, right? And I'm
Right.
like, all right. So
You're
I
like,
basically
just
go,
kidding. Just kidding. I
yeah,
have no
get,
idea
get
what I'm
get back
doing.
to you. Yeah, so we ended up basically shooting. Long story short, I said to Deb, call your former boss and beg him. So that's what she did. And I met with her former boss, who
Hmm.
used to be at like one of the big shots in Universal Music. And I said, "I- I- all I want from you is to assemble a team and oversee them, and I'll pay you just for that. Can I please hire you for this one thing?" And he was like semi-retired. He's like, "Yeah, that's fine, right?" So we ended up basically shooting $175,000 music video on the Hollywood lot with 100 extras on the
Wow.
lot.
Wow.
And it was an amazing, it was beautiful and it worked perfectly. And basically, that's just jumpstart this production company that
Wow.
lasted for a few years. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, we're almost out of time. I've got a bunch of rapid fire questions for you if you're
Sure, go
ready.
for it. Yeah.
All right. What's one thing, and this one trips people up sometimes, but
Oh,
what's one thing that people misunderstand about you, Christian?
Um, I think they misunderstand um, uh, sort of multiple interests
Mm.
as being non-committal.
Okay. That's a great way to, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. What's one of your biggest failures and what did you learn from that experience?
My biggest failure was not learning about marriage early enough. I come from three generations of broken homes,
Hmm.
and my and I didn't fix it. I didn't learn about it. I didn't know how. So I
Yeah.
was dating. I was super famous, and I was dating these runaway models, and one of them got pregnant. We had a baby. I had no intention of marrying. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what it was. I didn't believe in marriage, and then I she walked away. I was rude to her. I was mean
Mm-hmm.
to her. And then my daughter, Diana, my oldest daughter, who I eventually, miraculous ways, got back, and she's now in Texas. She, she ended up growing up in this sort of fractured place,
Mm-hmm.
just like I did.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
I think
see.
that was sort of the biggest, the
Yeah.
highest cost that I can't undo, and I live with it.
Gotcha.
And it has a happy ending, but I do feel like, man,
Yeah.
I
Well, and
wish
I'm
I'd,
sure in your
yeah.
current, in your marriage, you have
Mhm.
applied a lot of the lessons you learned.
Yes, yes. I've been happily married for 25 years. I have three beautiful children who love me, and
Nice. If
so
you could go back and give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would that be?
to seek wisdom with all your heart early, which is very counterintuitive for young people. Young people don't
Mm,
seek wisdom,
right.
because they don't
It-
have the wounds yet.
oh,
But
right.
to start early.
Yeah. It's a tough one because we probably wouldn't have listened, right? Our 18-year-old
Yeah,
selves probably
yeah,
wouldn't listen, but
yeah. That's paradoxical.
right. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, whom would you choose?
Outside of Jesus, I would say Alexander the Great.
Okay. Good one. I don't think we've heard that one. If you were given $10 million tomorrow with no strings attached, what would you do with it?
I would build a scaling business that devotes a large percentage of the profit to um, helping the poor.
Love it. What is one challenge that you're facing in your professional life right now?
Consequences of lack of wisdom in the past
Mm,
that that I know, acknowledge, fixing, like leaning into it, but the consequences sort of have this tail end, right? You have to still pay for it.
sure. Right, right. It doesn't, the consequences don't just
Yeah,
vanish because
they
you've,
don't vanish even if you understand that, you made a mistake there
right.
strategically.
Sure. Makes sense. Um, how about a book or two that you could recommend besides yours, that you could recommend for our listener?
Sort of a classic book, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm,
Um,
hmm. Yeah.
it's sort of this, it's a thin book, but I think sort of it goes
Viktor
into the
Frankl.
Viktor
Yeah.
Frankl to the
Yeah.
core of sort of the human condition
Hmm.
in a way that very few do. Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art.
Mm,
It's sort of this is how you show up as a professional every day,
love it.
And then the latest one by Seth Godin, This is Strategy.
Okay.
It's
I have not.
like a new thing that just came out. That
Okay.
I think it's Seth Godin
Nice.
was one of my biggest influences when it comes to sort of business
Yeah.
and more.
Okay. Absolutely. How has financial abundance made your life better?
I think it gives you the ability to serve others and to have choices in life,
Mm,
right?
love it.
That's massive.
That's really good. What is one question that I have not asked that you wish I had?
Um, what is the most important decision in business that on the surface has no relation to the business?
What is it?
Who you marry.
Ah, it, explain that a little bit more. Why is that so important?
Well, because that's your absolute business partner is always your spouse, whether he or she is involved in business or not,
Hmm.
because they have a completely outsized influence on the trajectory of your life, your how you deal with hardship,
Sure.
what you believe in, what
Yeah.
what carries you at the very core, the foundation of who you are,
Right.
to overcome and to give and to sort of overflow into other people.
Right.
So
Right.
if things are leaky and bad
Yeah.
at home,
Yeah.
everything is leaky and bad at work. If
Right.
things are robust and strong and overflowing with joy and stability at home, that will overflow into the business as well.
Mm, that's really, really good wisdom right there. So, um, Christian Ray Flores, where can our listeners find you online?
If they want sort of weekly insights into success and significance, my newsletter is a really good resource. ChristianRayFlores.com is the URL. And it's basically, I do 2 a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. And I think it just offers a lot of value. If people feel like, oh, you know what, that kind of guidance I need, go to exponential.life, spelled without the E, starts with an X.
Yeah.
And that's basically all you need to know about my coaching program, the programs that we offer, the kinds of work we do with people.
Fantastic. Um, this has been really a different, pretty different than a lot of our episodes in a good way. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for spending your time with us, Christian. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to hear that. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the listener, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us. And that is your time and attention combined. We appreciate that. So thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on From Adversity to Abundance. We hope today's episode has equipped you with valuable insights and practical advice to elevate your real estate journey. For more inspiring stories and resources, visit us at www.adversitytoabundance.com. If this episode has inspired you, please share it with a friend who could also benefit from our conversation. Together, let's turn adversity into abundance. Until next time, keep building your mental fitness and your real estate empire.